Hey everyone, back with another video here. This will be scuba diving and free diving, the Port Aransas South Jetty, back on 21st of August. Start this thing off with a scuba dive here. Got my flag in the water already. Get ready to start my descent right here off the rocks. Obviously where I'm standing on this rock, it's only maybe 2-3 feet deep. But right off this rock, these granite blocks tend to drop down. It's about 10 feet deep. I'm going to get down here, settle on this rock, kind of get my gun loaded up and get ready to go. Water temp out here was about 91 degrees, which is pretty warm, but that's not unusual for August here. The tide was slack, not a whole lot of current going one way or another. You can see the sediment in the water here. It's not really moving a whole lot in either direction. Visibility is about 5 foot for the jetties. That's pretty darn good. It is a little bit milky. It's not super clear, but it's a good 5 foot. It's enough to hunt. I'm going to be looking for sheepshead and gray snapper mostly down here. Sheepshead have to be 15 inches. You're allowed 5. Average here at the jetties, they normally run maybe 12 to 14. They've not very often do they actually hit 15. You got to be kind of picky with the sheepshead you're shooting out here. And those guys will normally be hanging out down at about 15 feet. Looking at my gauge here, I'm at 11. I'm at 11 feet. I'm about to start my descent. It's going to be hard to tell in the video. It looks like I'm moving horizontally, but I'm actually swimming downward down the face of these rocks at an angle here. All right, so with the gray snapper, there's no limits on them. I can shoot them at any size. They average maybe 6 to 12 inches. They're pretty small. Kind of find that at all depths down here, but they're real small. They're real fast. They're really hard to shoot. When you do hit them, you tend to tear up half of the meat because they're so small. But I'll take what I can get. All right, so starting a descent here, what I'll tend to do is get on these rocks. I'll move down. I'll stop. I'm already at 20. I'm stopping. I'm looking over my shoulder. I'm looking around. There went a spadefish. It's real common for sheepshead to get behind you and just kind of follow you around. You'll be swimming for 30 minutes looking around going, man, I don't see anything down here. You turn around, look behind you, and there's like 4 sheepshead following you. All right, so always look behind you. Viz isn't great. It's enough to kind of see. Everything looks a little bit fuzzy out there, beyond 4 or 5 foot. But again, for the jetties, this is actually a pretty good day. Most days you extend your arm out and point your fingers away from you, and you wouldn't be able to see your fingertips. Right, so this is pretty good. So again, coming down here, this plant right here in front of me is a hydroid. I tend to wear even like a half a mil skin when I dive the jetties, because that plant right there, if you rub it with your bare skin, it will sting you. Yellow plants over here are, they're not plants, they're actually corals. Those are sea whips. Those are pretty common at the jetties. Of course, anywhere you see those, you see that fishing line, that's a bunch of fishing line right there. Those sea whips and those hydroids tend to get all caught up in the fishing line. So when you see big wads of that stuff, you can almost guarantee there's fishing line down inside of that plant material. Right, so these rocks, they go down. I'm at about 23 right here. These rocks, they slope down. You can go all the way to the bottom, and they'll kind of end at about 35 to 40 feet, depending where you're at on the jetty. I don't go all the way to the bottom here. I went down to maybe 20, I think 23 was my max. Kind of looked around for a little bit, came back out. Didn't really see too much. I was just kind of scoping this out. I kind of wanted to walk to the end to do some free diving, which I actually do after the scuba dive here. But I'm down here looking around. Again, I'm looking for sheepshead, gray snapper. There's going to be spadefish. They're okay. They're a good beginner fish for beginner spear fishermen. But they're only okay. The ones at the jetties tend to be pretty small. Offshore, they can get pretty big and worth shooting. Here at the jetties, it's really hard to pull the trigger on them. They're just not worth it. You're just not going to get enough meat off of them, and it's mediocre meat at that. Aside from that, there are some flounder. You'll see me looking in between these rocks and the sand pockets. I'll sit there and stare at the sand for a minute. I'm looking for flounder. I've stabbed quite a few flounder out here doing just that. In between the rocks where you have sand, very common to find flounder laying in there. I've actually taken 2 by taking my kill knife out and stabbing the flounder to the sand and grabbing him with my hand and carrying him out of the water. I've done that twice at the jetties. Right. So see the rocks, they look real fuzzy, lots of barnacles on them, lots of hazards down here. Aside from the hydroids and the fishing line you get tangled in, there's hooks everywhere. There's scorpion fish, which look just like a lot of the small rocks They almost look like that grass too. Again, long spine urchins. There's ship traffic coming through, which can tend to kind of suck you real hard along with the current. Visibility's not great. It's just gonna be. It's pretty unique diving here at the jetties. Like I say, this is a good day with 5 foot. I've seen it as good as maybe 15 to 20. I can count those times on one hand. Not very many times I've seen that happen. And that's out of hundreds of dives I've done out at the jetties out here. So again, this is a short dive. I'm going to leave this pretty intact so you guys can kind of just get a feel what it's like diving down here. It's not great. Honestly, most of the video that I take at the jetties, I'd say I take video most of the time that I go out there. Again, some more spades coming in here. I'm always running video. If I'm underwater, I'm almost definitely running video. But most of the time, especially from the jetties, I get home, I review my footage, and I delete it. Normally this video here I would probably have deleted, but I just want to let you guys... I did some freediving also, so I got some video of that. It's some pretty decent footage for the jetties, but normally this stuff gets deleted. It's just not usable with a wide angle on the GoPro. The footage with 3-4 foot vis is just really not any good. So I'm going to cut this video. It's going to be a little bit of a lengthy one. I think it's like 20 minutes, 20 something minutes. But I probably won't be cutting any more jetty videos anytime soon. So if you've seen this one, you pretty much know what it's like down there at the jetties. You're not going to really see a whole lot more than what's right in front of you while you're down there. Now, if you're into photography, the jetties can be pretty good macro photography opportunities. There's lots of spot fin butterflies, damsels. Damsels are real common down there. There's blennies everywhere. There's wrasse. Belted sandfish is real common down there at the jetties. But when you get down in these gaps, that's where all those little fish tend to sit, is down in those crevices. The viz can be pretty decent when you're looking down in the crevice. It's just not good when you're trying to look far. But those can give you some pretty good photo opportunities there. So here I've surfaced. I'm already done with the dive. That was it. I kind of went down there, looked around a little bit, didn't see anything worth staying for. So I'm going to go ahead and climb out here. I don't really want to do a long, lengthy scuba dive here. So that's my weight for my dive flag there I just set on the rock. Got to get the gun unloaded. So I'm going to come up here, get the gun unloaded. I climb out of the water. After I got out of the water, I met up with another gentleman that happened to be out there, spearfisherman. Another spear fisherman that happened to be out there, and he was just freediving, not scuba. So I actually climbed out of the water, approached a gentleman who was already kind of freediving a little further down the jetty from me, and asked him if he wanted to go all the way down to the end and do some freediving down at the end of the jetty. So he agreed, and the two of us I put my scuba gear in the truck. The two of us just grabbed our snorkel gear, our spear guns, and kind of took a little hike all the way down to the very, very, very end of the jetty. Right now, when it comes to spearing the jetties, this is on the beach side. You see the end of the jetty there. I'd say 90% of the fish worth catching or worth shooting are in the last 10% of the jetty. This last 50 feet of the jetty is where all the good fish are. There are plenty of fish closer to the beach than this, but none of it compares to this very last 50 feet of the jetty. It really is very densely packed with all kinds of fish. Right, so I'm out here away from the jetty a little ways. You see there's still these 5-ton granite blocks. There's some mullet there, a little bit of metal structure. I have no idea what that's from. But I'm out from the jetty quite a little ways, and there's still 5-ton granite blocks way out here away from the jetty. You can see how far out I am. This is why when you throw as far as you can with your fishing pole, you still get snagged up on the rocks all the time. Depending exactly where you're at, some of these rocks extend pretty far out. There's a school of small crevalle there. I'm trying to tell this gentleman, but he can't hear me. His head's underwater. You see him swim away from me here. He's going to leave my visibility pretty quickly. Now, range on my gun is about 10 feet underwater. He's definitely in spear gun range still. So what that means is if I'm underwater, we got to be careful where the other spear fisherman's at when we take a dive and go shoot, because you could easily shoot another person and not even realize they're even there. You won't even realize you shot them until after the fact. Again, visibility down here is just not great. That gun will shoot way beyond visibility. All right, so there's a little gray snapper. Took a pop at him. Missed him. Coming right back up. You see, it's not very deep here. Again, I'm right off the very end of the jetty. You would think this would be really deep, like 30 feet, something like that. It's not. It's barely, 15 feet. It might approach 20. I would say probably not even 20. It's pretty shallow. You can see when I surface between these dives here, I'm not going up far before I'm already at the top. Again, that was another little gray. That was a mullet there to my right I saw. Took a shot at him. Missed him also. I did shoot one gray on this trip. Of course, my GoPro wasn't running when I hit the one gray that I did hit, but, it is what it is. See lots of fry in the water here, big schools of fry, especially around the very end of the jetty. These fry were just absolutely everywhere. Pretty much everything up the food chain was kind of chasing these fry around, eating them. Did see lots of skipjack. I actually saw a school of skipjack. A couple of schools of skipjack come by me. And I assume they're down there tearing up those little fry. So again, kind of footage of the rocks down here. Again, they're just kind of piled up randomly. There's gaps where there's huge areas where there's no rocks, but it still tends to be kind of small rubble, even where the big granite blocks are missing. There's an apron at the end of the jetty that extends pretty far out underwater just to help protect the jetty from hurricanes and things like that. See this big hole right in front of me here? I'm going to take a little dive down into this hole. This is right off the end of the jetty. I stand on that rock right there and fish all the time. There's about a 10-foot hole right here. Doesn't hardly look like it. Lots of urchins. Try not to touch the walls. Try not to get stabbed by an urchin here. But pretty good little hole here for predators to sit in and ambush bait swimming over the top. Right, pretty neat to see that. There's some rocks out here, probably 10 feet out from the jetty. You can literally stand on and have your head out of the water. Some of these rocks are pretty shallow. And again, there's areas where it's just rubble on bottom and there's not any big granite blocks at all. It's just kind of random. So a couple of spades here. Again, I'm looking for sheepshead. I've shot at a couple of grays. I'd really like a nice sheepshead. Would be great. Unfortunately, the sheepshead that are showing up aren't exactly great. So right there were 4 snook. That's what I'm telling this other freediver here. 4 snook just swam right in front of me. They're game fish, though. In state waters, you cannot shoot snook. Even if they were or not game fish and I could shoot them, the slot limit's 24 to 28. It's a very narrow window. Those were maybe 12-inch snook. They weren't very big. They weren't all that big, so I wouldn't have been able to shoot them anyway. So anyway, here you can see some of the small rubble mixed in with the big stuff. Again, it's just kind of random how it's scattered around out here. See, there's the surface. I have a hard time even saying that's even 15 feet. And you see how I'm right off the end of the jetty here. That is not very deep at all. Right, so I'm watching some smaller fish here. Again, there's a spade. I'm holding the gun up. What I'm trying to do is these spades like to rub up against the bands when the bands are loaded. I'm trying to get these guys for the camera to come rub up against the bands for me. Unfortunately, they got a little spooked by me kind of swimming down at them, and they weren't really having it. So that was a fail. All right, so this is kind of our last, my last little free dive here on the beach side at the end. Again, we didn't see a whole lot that we could shoot or that we really wanted to shoot. We're just kind of out here checking it out, kind of pissing around. After this short dive I'm going to do here, we actually exited the water, took a little break, we drank some water, whatnot, took a little rest, and actually got in the water on the channel side down near the very end. Now, normally I wouldn't recommend diving like this. Here we are exiting the water here. So I wouldn't normally recommend diving anywhere near the end of the jetty like I'm doing here. This was a slack tide. We happened to catch it just right. It's a very narrow window of time as well. Look how good that water looks. Normally the problem is the current is going in or out very strongly. It's moving very fast, and it tends to rip water around the point of this jetty. If you get within 50 feet of the end of this jetty on most days, that the current will kind of suck you around the end of that jetty, and there's not a whole lot you can really do about it. Once you get around the end of it, those waves pounding into the jetty, you're probably going to get smashed into the rocks and everything else. So it's generally not somewhere I would recommend that you go unless it's a rare example like this. Very, very calm day and clear enough water with no real tidal movement. Right, pretty narrow window with with those options there. So I saw a good sheepshead here. As soon as I descended, he took off. There's a smaller one lingering in front of me there. Of course, the smaller ones that aren't worth shooting, he's too small to shoot. Of course, they'll just sit there. They don't go anywhere. The bigger ones, they get bigger for a reason, right? So they're pretty spooky. They tend to take off pretty quick. Again, we're right at the end here, but we are in the channel side. There's the very end of the jetty right there to my right. I just looked at. Obviously here, this is much deeper than the beach side was at about 15 feet. Here, I'm not sure how far it goes down before the rocks end and what the depth is. I've never scuba dived the end of this jetty. Not on the channel side anyway. I assume these rocks go down for quite a ways, but I'm freediving here, so obviously I'm not going to be able to get down very far. So I saw a little sheepshead there. He turned and kind of booked it as soon as I turned around and looked at him. Again, water's still milky on this side. A lot of the small fry still hanging out on this side all over the place. They actually make it hard to kind of see through the water at some points just because they're so thick and just right in front of my face. Right. Now, I'm not really looking for flounder down here. As you get further down the jetty like this, it's all rock. There's no sand patches between the rocks down here like there is closer toward the beach. Right. Now, if y'all are interested in jetty information, Army Corps Engineers maintains these jetties. You can actually look all this stuff up online. You can look up diagrams that show like the capstone, how much they put on what date, and basically the layout of the jetty underwater, where the spurs are at, how far the apron extends, all of that. Right. So that was another little gray snapper I took a shot at there. I think that's miss number 3 for me so far in this video. Right, but that just kind of comes with the territory. Jetty diving, shooting at gray snapper. They're just not all that easy to hit when they're that small. So again, sheepshead there. There's a spade. Those guys are, the sheepshead's definitely too small to shoot legally. Spade's just not worth the effort. It's kind of cool just to, honestly, I had a good time doing this. It was fun just to get down there, just to have the viz, kind of get down there and kind of look around. So here's a gray snapper kind of buzzing around right below me here. Problem with missing these gray snapper like this is when you miss that fish, and I just missed him. Luckily, my shaft went over the top of that rock. Of course, I missed him, right? My shaft went over the top of that rock, but most of the time what happens is you miss that gray snapper. Sometimes you hit him, and that shaft just goes clean through him. And you just smash the tip of that shaft right into that granite. That tends to happen every trip I go out there and spearfish. You're going to shoot rocks. Get over it. It's going to destroy your tip a little bit. Go home, take a file or a small grinder, just grind a point back into it, and just keep charging on. Eventually, you'll grind so much off, you'll have to just buy a new tip, but that's jetty diving. So there's some mullet there. Big school of mullet just kind of passed through right in front of me. Again, we're right here at the very end of the jetty. It's a little intimidating being out here. I know it's pretty deep here. Never really know what's down there. There goes I think that was a green sea turtle that just took off. He took off so quick you couldn't hardly see him though. Again, tons of fry in the water. I have no idea what these fry are. I don't know if these are juvenile mullet. That would be my guess. It would be juvenile mullet, but I'm really just stabbing in the dark with that. I really don't know. Lots of them though. So again, just hugging the rocks. I tend to silhouette when I'm down here. I want to get low, get my belly on the rock, and kind of look upwards and silhouette upwards toward the lighter sky. Tends to show those fish up a lot better than looking downward. Tends to be darker as you're looking down. Those fish are quite a bit harder to spot when you're looking down. So again, I'll kind of swim down there, lay on my belly on that rock, and just kind of look around for a minute. But I'll tend to look upwards when I'm doing that. So there's some more mullet. There were quite a few kind of pony mullets swimming around. For the most part, they're hugging the rocks down here. There's that green sea turtle again, kind of just hanging out. He didn't get spooked that time. I think that's the same one. I'm not 100% on that. Those are protected. You can't harass them in any way. Anything other than looking at it is pretty much harassment. If you try to touch it in any way, or do anything other than just observe it, could be considered harassment. So leave those guys alone. So again, there went some mullet. Again, not a whole lot. There's a sheepshead there. He's kind of iffy. He's maybe 14. He's real close to that size, but I don't think he's quite going to make it. So kind of gave him a pass. But not great video. Sorry about that. Not much I can do about it. Not very often are you going to get visibility better than this out there. So here's your jetty video, right? But hope you guys maybe gleaned something from this. Anybody just kind of curious, like what it looks like down there, so on and so forth. What's the viz like? But hopefully you guys can take something away from this video at the very least, because I probably won't be cutting another one. Like I said, the footage is really just not great, as you guys can see. If you're all even still watching this video right now, I'm already surprised, right? So there went a few small gray snapper. There was a sheepshead. Again, all this stuff's really small. I did shoot one gray. I was not running the GoPro when I did it. He was really, really small. I did bring him home, put him in the freezer, but yeah, wasn't a very successful day. But still enjoy being out there, getting in that water, and just be able to get some dives in on days like this, because these days are not very common. So that kind of ends the video here. We're going to exit the water now and kind of conclude the day. Again, I took one small gray snapper home. That was it. But still grateful to get out there, have the clear water, get some diving done. Again, hopefully you guys got something from the video. Thanks for watching this long. Thanks for watching my videos, period. And I hope to see you guys on the next one.